Barney Rosenzweig has been a master at the philosophy of contrary opinion. When the world zigs, Barney zags. I had a chance to sit down with the industry-changing television producer whose impressive career has spanned over half a century. Rosenzweig is best known for his work on the groundbreaking 14-time Emmy Award-winning television show Cagney and Lacey, which starred his wife Sharon Gless. However, there is much more to his story. Throughout his career, he has overcome obstacles such as anti-Semitism and discrimination to become a trailblazer in the entertainment industry. In this interview, Rosenzweig shares stories from his early days at USC to the outrageous things that went on behind closed doors to get a picture made or a TV show on the air. And later in the segment, Sharon joins Barney to discuss their marriage and their history together. They share it all, everything from their passionate and tumultuous marriage to the beginning of how their relationship developed while working on the hit show. Join us as we delve into the fascinating world of Barney Rosenzweig. Rolling? Are you rolling?
Yes.
Wait, you were just looking at this gorgeous photograph of you and Sharon Gless.
Yes.
And you kind of got emotional. Tell me what you're thinking.
Special time, you know. It's a show I created for her. And I think it had more to do with us getting married than any other single thing. I was in love with Sharon for years. You know, I fell in love with her on Cagney and Lacey. We had an affair, very scandalous. Broke up, got together again, broke up again. And finally, we were not together, but she came to me to see if I would create a show for her.
Oh.
And I told her no. I didn't want to work with her anymore.
Why?
Well, because I was interested in her, and I didn't want to. I thought it was too complicated.
Right.
To work with her and to have a relationship. But then she said, "Okay, well, if you're not going to do it, there's two other guys who want to make shows with me," and I couldn't deal with that. So I created a show, which, by the way, lest it go unsaid on this piece, I'm very proud of the Trials of Rosie O'Neill.
Yes.
It's on Amazon and Prime, Amazon Prime, and you can get it there, and you should, because it's wonderful. But anyway, I think the reason I say it had something to do with our getting married was love was not enough of a reason to get married. I got married her out of gratitude. I saw how hard she was working. She was literally saving my well-known ass on a daily basis. I was on the line financially for this show. There was no intermediary. I was not only the producer of the show, I was the studio. I was the financier.
Amazing.
I put my house up for mortgage. I mean, everything I had was on the line. Now, I was fairly comfortable with doing that. I knew if I didn't take a salary, that would be a pretty good hedge against any inflation, along with insurance and other things that I could do. But still, I was really on the line. There was no studio to go to say, come up with more money. Nobody ever figured out what to do with half a movie.
You know, it's a powerful thing for me to be sitting here.
Really?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Yeah. Well, anybody who knows me knows the impact, 1970s, early 80s television had on. Even I can say that I probably wouldn't even be sitting here if I hadn't had the guidance that I eagerly seeked out in television. And so, you know, it was my way of actually navigating my world, because I was raised by old world Italians who didn't have a clue as to how to guide a young woman in New York City, right, in America. So I looked to television, and the television that you had a hand in impacted me tremendously.
Well, let me tell you the impact I had on television then. Before Cagney and Lacey, when you went in to pitch something to the network, a typical pitch would be, he's a private eye, but here's the deal, he's blind. Well, that's, good standard show with a gimmick. That was it.
That was the extent of the pitch.
After Cagney and Lacey, you'd give them that pitch and they'd say, okay, but what's his life like at home? Does he have a dog? Does he have a wife? I mean, that was the change.
Well, that's interesting. You and I were just talking outside about, you said, well, why do you want to know that? And I'm like, well, I want to know what goes on. Like,
Yeah.
what is the underpinning of it all?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, you know, you're sitting here and you have such a unique perspective that, you know, my followers are interested in,
Yeah.
right? You belong to a time in Hollywood that is no longer, right? So, you know, I'm wanting to know the stories that maybe you haven't told about, you know, the landscape, the emotional landscape of how things got done, the things you saw. Maybe talk about a little bit like some of the most outrageous things that went on behind closed doors to get a picture made or to get a TV show up and running.
There's a thing called the philosophy of contrary opinion. Basically what it is when they zig, you zag.
Right.
USC was a hotbed in the 1950s of anti-Semitism. The chancellor of the school was Rufus Bernard von Kleinschmidt, a member of the Bund movement in America and a eugenicist. Not a good guy by 2020 terms. And his staff, that is dean of men, dean of all these deans, were populated by other Germans of like belief. There were quota systems on who could get into the dental school, who could get into the medical school, how many Jews could get into the law school. It went on. My first date at USC was Robert Young's daughter, Barbara Young. Wow. Lovely girl. A Delta Gamma. We never went out more than the one time. And later I found out it was because the DGs fined their members $25 for going out with a Jew. Wow. I never got the price on a black guy or a Hispanic, right. But Jews were $25. Wow. So that was it. My mother found that out. My mother was beside herself. Leave that school. Go to UCLA. We'll buy you a Corvette with the money we save on tuition.
Amazing.
That was a good bribe in the 50s. I got to tell you, Corvette was a real girl getter. But I said, no, Ma, I said, someday I'm going to own that fucking school. And I sort of did. And the way I did that was, USC was as still is, it's a good school, but it's a good football school. And the rooting section was led by what they called a Yell King. And the year, my junior year, USC had the worst season it had had in history. 1 win and 9 losses. To this day, they've never equaled that failure. Coincidentally, the Yell King, a young man who was terrible at the job. He didn't know it, but he was terrible at the job. And the kids took out their frustrations with the football team on this guy who was terrible at the job. And he became the focal point for everything that they were unhappy about. They made up songs about it. They threw rotten tomatoes at him. They threw fruit at him. They threw cans of beer at him. They hung him in effigy. It was a terrible, had it been me in that position, I would have been suicidal. It was that awful. It was terrible. Now, good mama question. Why in that environment would I say, I want that job? I want to be the Jewish guy in front of all those pseudo-Nazis.
Right.
And to do this job. Now, you could, if you're cynical, you could say, well, this guy's a good act to follow.
Right.
The football team will never be that bad again. And but that wasn't it. I mean, there's something else going on.
Right.
And my best friend at the university was going to run for the job. And he would have won. He was president of his fraternity. And he had had as many credentials for this job as I had. I had done that job in high school. So had he. We were competing high schools. And I went to him and I said, Danny, you can be anything at this school you want to be.
Right.
There's only one thing I know how to do. I know how to do this job. And he said, he didn't even think about it. He dropped out and he made me king. Literally, he was the man who made me king because he got all the fraternity system to vote for me. First Jew, first non-fraternity man in the history of USC to hold that job.
Wow.
And I was a sensation, putting it mildly, a sensation. Jim Murray, who became the Pulitzer Prize winning columnist for the Los Angeles Times, was then writing for the Sports Illustrated, wrote a piece about me. Luella Parsons wrote about me. I got more coverage in the San Francisco press for the SC Stanford game than the game got.
Right.
I was very good at that job. Now, what got me to do that?
Yeah,
Why I would
right.
expose myself that way
Right.
to that kind of vituperation, to that kind of stuff. But if you could appreciate the ego thing that did for me,
Right.
that lasted me all the way through into Daniel Boone, years later. Because for the first few years of my life in show business, I felt like I was a has-been. Because at 21, I was a star in Los Angeles. The local newspapers wrote about me all the time. And now I was nobody, working at MGM as a nobody. And the reason I was at MGM, by the way.
Nobody, what do you mean?
Well, here's what I mean. I'll go beyond that. Let me go back a little bit more to go finish the thought I had about anti-Semitism. So I'm a hotshot at USC. In those days, corporations came on campus to interview young men, only men mostly, not the women, in 1958, to get jobs in the big corporations. Like most of the kids of my generation, I wanted to be in public relations. Wasn't going to go to law school. I wasn't going to go to medical school because I was bored with school. I wanted to get out and get on with my life, get
Right.
married, have children like my parents did. But I didn't get any of the jobs. I didn't get a job with Procter & Gamble. I didn't get a job with Bethlehem Steel. I didn't get a job with the Valley National Bank. Well, turns out you can't get a job with Procter & Gamble in 1958 in public relations if you can't join the country club in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Ah.
And if you're a Jew, you can't do that. Same thing was true in San Francisco with Bethlehem Steel. And even my soon-to-be grandfather-in-law, who owned the largest bank west of the Mississippi, was fine about having a Jew for a grandson-in-law, but he couldn't have one work in the bank. So I said, well, what am I going to do? I'm going to zig whenever he's zagging. I went into show business because that was the era of the last picture show. Nobody was going into the movie business. Theaters were closing all over America.
Wow.
It was the last picture show.
Is that when you took the mailroom job?
That's when I took the mailroom job. And
How long did you stay in the mailroom before?
not long.
Right.
Not long, because as luck would have it, that fall, I got the job in the summer. That fall, right out of USC, where I'm the sensational Yell King, right? A big movie's going to be made at MGM. Big movie. The studio would be bankrupt if this movie did not succeed. And so everybody in the publicity department, including the mailroom, was gathered into my boss's office. That's how big his office was. 40 of us in that office. I'm plastered against the back wall. There's a problem. The movie's going to be premiered for a charity, and the charity is not doing its job for publicity. We're getting nothing in the society pages. We're getting nothing off the drama pages. They're not doing a good job. The producer's wife got the producer to give this movie to the charity, and her favorite charity, and they're not doing. Who is the charity? USC's medical school. I said, excuse me, I think I can help here. I got them to do Ben-Hur card stunts on national television. I had a chariot come out around the Coliseum bearing the Yell leaders of that year. Again, national television. The premiere of Ben-Hur in Los Angeles, which I wound up running it, was the most successful in the world.
Yeah.
And that was November. So by November, I was a made man and doing very, very well.
How do your ideas come to you? In other words, you had the idea that you wanted to make a female Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Right.
How did that idea come to you?
Okay.
And
That's an easy one. That's too easy. I was dating at the time Barbara Corday, who was a feminist. I was a 50s heterosexual male. I did not understand any of that stuff. Right. I remember sitting with her at, this is a major moment. My life is peppered with less than a half dozen, maybe 2 or 3 moments of what Gloria Steinem calls epiphanies that were life-changing. We were dating. It was our second date, and we went to a movie called Scent of a Woman. Not the one with Al Pacino.
Right.
The original one with
Right.
The Italian movie, Vittorio Gassman. And Westwood, maybe 150 people in the audience, small theater. And it's a black and white, post-World War II Italian comedy. And people are laughing, and I'm laughing, I'm having a good time. And I noticed that there's almost a glare hitting me in the right corner of my eye. And I look down, and the light is bouncing off of Barbara's fist, which is clenched and I look over and I say, "Are you all right?" And she said, "This may be the ugliest, most sexist film I've ever seen in my life." I said, "You want to leave?" She says, "No, you watch. Later, we'll talk." So, okay, I don't know what to do with that information, so I'm sitting there watching this movie, and a little miracle happened, which became an epiphany. I cannot explain it. It was not something I consciously thought about. But what I was seeing in my mind's eye on that screen was not Italy in 1946. It was Germany in 1933, and the women were not women, they were Hasidic Jews. And suddenly what I was looking at was the most virulent anti-Semitic movie I could imagine. And I got it. I understood what she was talking about. Barbara used to say, Barney's not a feminist, but he gets it.
Yeah.
And I think that's true.
That's interesting.
So that changed my life, because from then on, I never looked at a commercial the same way.
Yeah.
I never looked at, I ruined a lot of stag parties, I got to tell you
I'm
that.
sure.
And even my favorite musical, Candide, I don't go anymore to that. I would always go to any revival of that show. It's ugly.
Right. You see it differently.
Yeah, I see it differently. So it made me the perfect guy to do Cagney and Lacey. I just got it.
Right.
Now, Barbara then started feeding me a lot of books to read. One of the books was a book called From Reverence to Rape, Treatment of Women in the Movies by Molly Haskell, which I still recommend to people to read. It's a brilliant book. And in there somewhere she says something to the effect of, there's never been a buddy movie for women. There's never been a Robert Redford, Paul Newman movie for women. And I thought, well, let's make one. In fact, the first title was Newman and Redford. That was the real title for Cagney and Lacey. Oh. And the legal department said you can't do that, so we didn't do it. I would sit there in my hotel room in New York on some kind of a trip I had to make for CBS, talking to the writing staff from my hotel room on the phone. And I'd look for something to read, and I'd pull out to write on, and I'd pull out the drawer, and there was a laundry list. I could write on that to make notes. And I looked, and I said, wait a minute. I said, you guys know it costs $3.40 to do a man's shirt, and it costs $6.20 to do a woman's blouse? Let's write something, do something about that. And I would everywhere, I'd see it. I would just see it everywhere. And I would keep feeding the guys, let's do this, let's do that.
And the fact that your mother actually, combated her fear in order to provide you with what you needed is a huge thing.
Yeah.
To see.
Oh, yeah. She's amazing. She was amazing in a way, knowing her limitations as I do,
Amazing.
and knowing how strong-willed she was about it. I mean, she bent my father to her will. She pretty came damn close to bending me to her will.
Right.
But ultimately, she gave me the gas to get to Berlin.
Amazing. In this segment of my interview with Barney Rosenzweig, Sharon joins us to discuss their marriage and their history together. They talk about how their relationship developed while working on Cagney and Lacey. They share with us their unique perspective of being in love with someone they had been working with, and how that affected their relationship. They also get super candid in revealing the many bumps in the road they faced in their marriage, learning how to be married to one another and how to merge two very big lives successfully. You're very, very colorful storyteller and man.
Yes, there you are.
Honestly,
All the above.
You were just about to say something about the fact that I said that you guys really did something very, very difficult to do, which is to do a very successful show, to fall in love, to navigate that privately, secretly, and then for it all.
Those things are never planned. You understand?
Yeah, I know. And you were about to say that it was a different time, right? And it was a different way to go through it. And I want to know like what that was like for you and how you navigated your families even during that
Well, it
time.
was complicated. I was married to a very powerful. We were a power couple, Barbara and I, in Hollywood. And I owed her a lot. She was special in my life. Good friend,
Yeah.
powerful woman.
How did she?
Taught me
How did she handle it?
Not well.
Not well.
I mean, she handled it as well as she could, but she, it was hard
Very,
times.
very complicated.
I won't guard my words too much, but a little bit, you know.
A little bit, you know. It's
She's it was. Listen, she was the woman who was betrayed. She was the woman who was rejected, and I was a cliche, you know. And boy, did I hate being a cliche, you know.
right.
And worse than just being a cliche, here I was making this show about women, and I was this avowed feminist, and suddenly everybody could say, "Oh, I get it. He just wanted to fuck the blonde."
Right.
You know, and
Right.
I thought, you know, man, this is really nothing that I wanted for my life. You know?
But I hope I can say this as well. When I was reading your book, you had said a part of the book focused on the relationship, and you said that Barbara Corday, your lady at the time, blamed Sharon,
Yes.
but didn't necessarily blame you,
Yeah, I was
which I
absolved.
think is anti-feminism.
Exactly.
Right?
Barbara and I were a factor in the business, you know,
Yeah.
and the community.
Yes.
More in the community
yes.
than in the business.
Yeah.
Barbara was one of the founders of the Hollywood Women Political Caucus with Barbara Streisand and others. You know, we'd give big, giant parties at our home, and it was a substantial home we had. You know, we had 2 level acres in the heart of Hancock Park, all tile swimming pool,
Major.
and a tennis court, and parking for a lot of people. You know, because we gave these parties, and we were.
You were a power couple in
and
the
that was all
business.
Barbara was doing. That was Barbara's doing, not mine. I was
Right.
not a social animal, and.
You were not a social animal?
No, I still am not. I'm very reclusive. I'm very much to myself. I like, you know, and I would find myself oftentimes at our pool and things with all 25 people around saying, I don't really know or care about any of these people. You know, it was not my life. You know.
Right.
And I didn't realize that the trades had like a society column where they trashed people. That just wasn't. I never knew that part of the industry.
Right.
Now they do.
Right.
But
Right.
and the first time I ever read somebody being trashed.
Right.
Was me
Wow.
in one of the society columns of like the Hollywood Reporter.
That's gotta be.
Saying,
That's
what
gotta be
blonde-
rough. That's gotta
Yeah,
be rough.
What blonde in a CBS detective show is breaking up a marriage? I just cannot tell you what it was like
Yeah.
in being put
Horrible.
in away and anyway,
Can you?
it took a long time before
But you know,
we ever got together.
To give the credits properly, I mean,
Yeah.
Barbara was gone from being a writer to being an executive at ABC,
Right.
to becoming a vice president of the company, to moving on to being the president of Columbia Pictures Television. She was the highest ranking female in the Coca-Cola company, which was owned Columbia.
Right.
I mean, she was a powerful person, powerful executive, popular one, you know, well thought of. She and Marcy Carsey were like the 2 top women in the business.
Wow.
And people knew that Barbara and I were this incredible unit. We'd come up with this show that wasn't necessarily a big hit internationally, but it was a huge hit in Hollywood. It influenced. It was an influencer. I think they use that word now in the social networks.
Yeah.
But we were influencers because the people in the business were watching our show.
Right.
And they were changing what they were ordering as a result of what they were seeing on our
powerful.
show. And a lot of it was due to Barbara. It wasn't just the show. Barbara, they knew Barbara, and they were saying, what's Barbara up to? What is Barbara's husband doing now? And I respected that. I ignored any feelings for Sharon other than obvious little crush things that I got with leading ladies. We didn't act on any of that for years. But finally, it just became overwhelming, and I, in a moment of weakness,
Or
So
strength.
that-
I'm going to
Or
say
strength.
to you, which I didn't say in the book and I've never said on film or in public. Did I feel terrible? Yes, I did. Am I sorry that I hurt her? Of course I am. I couldn't help it.
Yeah.
It was
It's
just a
overwhelming.
crazy, horrible, terrible time.
I won't ask if you do it all over again. I just won't, for fear of the answer.
I would never want to
Oh,
hurt
wow.
anybody
Yeah,
again.
right.
But if I found you again, yes, I would.
Thank you, sweetheart. That's a good answer.
Wow. So then why the blonde?
Why the blonde? You know, it was just, it was something kind of special happening, that's all. It was just chemical.
I asked him once, when it was getting very serious, I said, do you think maybe you fell in love with me in that editing room every night? Because he stayed till the end every single day, helping the editor. It was his show, and he would decide who would get the close-up, Tyne or me, who was more tired that day.
Right.
He did everything to protect us, to put us out there.
Right.
And I asked him, I said, do you think maybe you fell in love with me on the film monitor? And he said, could be. And when I wanted him to say, no, of course not.
Well, there was something very special and very different about making love to a woman who you have been working with on film, because you find yourself sort of in your own pornographic movie. You know, it's sort of
Right.
unique.
Right.
It's almost like an out-of-body experience, very
Right.
different kind of experience.
Well, I think you're actually using the word properly. I think the two of you have had a very unique experience of your partner, because, you know, I think you had said recently that I guess, you know, there was an 18-hour day and everybody was going home and your trailer lights were on, and, you know, Barney said, you know, Sharon, you gotta go home.
Go home.
You know, you gotta do life. I
Yeah.
can give you the
Love that
wardrobe.
story. I'm
Tell-
so
tell-
impressed you remember it.
Will you tell it for us? It's a beautiful story.
Yes, it's a great story. I can't believe you remember that. Yeah, it was like at the end of maybe year 4. It wasn't the end at all, but it was like the end of year 4. And it was the last shooting of the last day of that season. And I was in my trailer packing it, because I think we changed motorhomes. He'd upgrade the motorhomes every year. I mean, they got to be better and better and better. And so I would be packing up. I had things on the walls and, you know, all.
Yeah.
And so everybody had gone home. Everybody had left. Everything was shut down. It was all dark. And he happens to walk by and sees that the lights are on in my trailer. So he knocks on the door and he comes in. And he said, what are you doing here? I said, nothing. I'm just packing up my stuff. And he said, Sharon. I don't know exactly how he said, because he did it much better than I'm going to do it. But he said, you know, we tell you what to say. We tell you what to wear. We tell you where to stand. We tell you how to feel.
Yeah.
We tell you, there were a list of things. And he said, you need to go home and find Sharon. You lost her. And I think I was just, I didn't know, I didn't want that to end, so I
Right.
didn't finish packing up my boxes.
Right.
I
Beautiful.
liked Christine Cagney. I liked the experience.
Right.
And I liked even by myself. I didn't know he was going to be coming. I like being by myself and not going anywhere.
Right.
It's one of the parts of our relationship, by the way, today that's very true. We're both what I call well-oiled units. We're very happy to be in our own company. That is me alone and her alone.
Right.
We can be that way in the same house.
Right.
And then we come together to share something,
Yeah.
or another couple, but usually it's just the two of us watching TV or having dinner together. And it's nice. We've been together for, what, 4 decades, I guess. And the relationship's gone through a lot of different phases. And the phase we're in now, I think, is more loving and more in love
Yeah.
in most ways than
That's
ever.
I can see that.
And
anyone can see
yeah,
that.
Yeah, we are. She's no longer. There's no question she's not Christine Cagney anymore,
Yeah.
and she is Sharon,
Yeah.
and that's who I'm crazy about.
Yeah.
And she's a lot of different things that I approve of, a lot of things I don't, but she's special.
Yeah.
And then there's that gratitude thing I had early that I told you about earlier, that brought me to a place of getting married. And then there was all the stuff, the bumps and stuff that happened in a marriage, especially in the first 10 years.
Tell me about what those bumps were. Learning how to be married to each other.
Yeah, it was hard. I mean,
May I interject one?
Go ahead.
I was getting ready to go to shoot one morning the Trials of Rosie O'Neill she had created for me. And it was, 4:30 in the morning. And he was still in bed. And he said, wait a minute, sit down. I'd said I'd marry him. He said, sit down for a minute. I need to ask you something. I said, what? He said, what do you expect? What do you think marriage is? What do you expect it to be? He said, I've been married twice before, and you've never been married, and I'd like to sort of feel your fantasy. What do you think that is?
Right.
I said, I don't know. I just know I can tell you I won't be wearing an apron. Yeah, and I wasn't even trying to be funny. I just knew that wasn't where
It
I
ain't happening.
shined,
Right.
or show.
Right.
And he said, okay. He said, I just want to know. I don't want to disappoint you. That was my fear, because I'd never been married, never wanted to be married.
Right. So then, why did you want to? Why did you choose to get married again and not just be in a perpetual love
well,
affair?
when I mentioned that gratitude thing,
Yeah.
that was very strong for me. I was very grateful to her. It was a different kind of a feeling for me than I can recall having for anybody. I mean, I don't remember being that particularly grateful to anybody. Even with my
Yeah.
mother, I was mad at her half the time that she did, and that's why I did things to spite her, and then realized later she did a lot of things. So that was a unique feeling. Secondly, I'd gotten involved a little bit in her family. I'd met her mother, and her mother was an old lady, lovely old lady. And I thought, she should see her daughter get married before she passes
that's
on.
lovely.
And I really didn't think about that.
That's lovely.
I think I got married more for that reason.
I
than-
actually got married because I thought it would make my father not
Yeah.
because I wanted to,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
because I thought,
I did it for her mother, really.
Yeah.
He says that all the time, but it doesn't bother me. But he
Yeah.
does say it honestly. I think I really did it for your mom. And my mom used to just love him. She'd call the house and
Oh, yeah.
he'd answer the phone and she'd say, oh, "Is this the love of my life?"
Oh, that's
Oh, no, she spoke like that in
amazing.
a very
Why do you
Husky voice.
suppose she loved him so much?
because he made me happy.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's beautiful.
I was not a
After
member.
a
I was
while,
not a
when
member of
it
the right
turned-
church.
When it
but-
turned to shit, she'd call him what's his name, or his nibs,
I had this thought earlier today, and I don't know if I don't want to psychoanalyze anybody, God knows, but like the toughness of your character, how you're very strong-willed. Does he have any of the qualities that Grimmy had?
She was
And
much
since you
better and
really
tougher than
didn't
me.
never-
She was. He did, but he does it differently.
Does it differently, right?
Yeah, I mean, she used to frighten me. I was young,
Right, of course.
and I so wanted to please her. I would always want to please him, but sometimes if I didn't want to do what he wanted to do, then
No, I'm paying the price
I
for
didn't like
Grimmy.
him.
I'm paying the price for Grimmy because Grimmy. Grimmy really had an impact on Sharon in terms of controlling the purse strings, for
Well,
instance.
Grimmy used to tell me you're fat.
Yeah.
You telling me I'm fat just kind of turns me off.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Because
As
But-
it's a
it would.
sexual thing gone awry.
Right.
Yeah.
When
Right.
he tells me I'm fat.
Right. Right.
But yeah, Sharon has a thing about, I think every married couple has a thing about money, for instance, and
What do you mean?
Well, in terms of budgeting and where we're going to spend the money, where we're not going to spend the money, and
Right.
what's important and what isn't important,
Right.
and how much we should be saving or not saving, and is this too extravagant or not?
Right.
There are
Right.
differences of opinion. But Sharon has a resistance because of how she was raised by her grandmother. She never wanted to be in that position again, where anybody could tell her anything
Or had to dance
about
for
money.
anybody.
You know what? I have to tell you, this was got a strong reaction from our followers, our young followers. The fact that you were very committed to not being controlled by a man or by money. You know, that you were very sovereign about.
I
how
still
you,
am.
Yeah,
But-
that's huge.
I do love to lean on him, if I need support, and I feel very safe because he's here.
Right. But in the leaning, it's because you don't need to.
Right.
But that you.
But
Yeah,
I mean,
it's-
halfway through our marriage, he was really all over me about money, and I'd worked hard, and I had a lot of money.
Right.
And I think I can.
Well,
say
we
this.
were,
Well-
we would hemorrhage money. I mean, in the early
yeah.
days.
It's
Oh my
not like we
God,
didn't have money.
Right.
But I
high class problems.
A
but-
high class
Yeah.
problem. But
Right,
it
right.
got to be because he was a poor boy from East LA. And I had finally gotten a job on my own, and I didn't have to answer to anybody.
Right.
And we separated legally financially.
Yeah, we are. We have separate account. We don't. We don't have
I
a
think
community
that's-
account.
demanded
Really
it.
good.
I demanded it. I said, I can't
That's really
take
good.
this. I can't have any. You're telling me what I can do or what I can't do with my money.
Right.
And I said, I think we need to legally separate.
And you did that.
Yeah.
We did
And
it.
it solved the problem.
Took about 3 years. Our business managers were going crazy.
Yeah.
But it took a long time. But
Well,
we are.
She never
See,
paid me
that's-
back my half of the community, but that's another story. We don't fight about that.
So full of
I don't think we want to go there.
Yeah, what can I say? You want to have a little?
But the two of you are so you're just beautiful.
Well, it's a
So
comfortable time of our
beautiful.
lives,
Yes.
It's an easy
This
time
is
now.
a good time for
Yeah,
us.
Yeah, I
this
can
is the
see
best.
that.
Got us at a good time.
I know.
This is the
well,
best.
that's
The
good.
last-
Lucky for all of us.
The last
But-
several years have really been the best. Yeah.
But I do think there's something so powerful about the two of you and how you had the unique experience of working together. I think when you're in the entertainment business specifically, to have a spouse that doesn't really know what your work is and isn't a participant in that,
Oh yeah.
it becomes really challenging to have a really strong union. And what I see in the two of you is just two powerful people who worked together, who respected one another, who worked on a very high level and have a very strong work ethic similarly.
Right.
You know?
I'm lucky enough being married to a man who not only is a producer himself, but he's a feminist. So if he wants to go sit on his rear in Florida and I want to go off to Canada to do a series, he says, please go.
Yeah.
He doesn't ever say, well, what about me? When are you coming back?
Amazing.
He knows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even, I think more to the point is this, we just know if we've got a plan, she and I are going to go someplace for 4 days, and a job comes up, hey, no question, job comes first.
Job always comes
Take the job.
Sure.
We'll find the
Sure.
4 days some other time.
Right.
Most of the couples I know can't do that.
Right.
They have a
Right.
problem with something
Right.
like that. So in that sense, we
Right.
work well together in that.
So I want us to take a little moment to really. I want to make sure that we, really cover everything that you want to say. Just every story that you may want to tell. I want to just take a second to.
Like this is the last time we'll
Not
ever
that
be
this
able
is the
to
last
sell it.
time, but like sometimes I'll walk away and I just like, I just want to gather myself. I don't want to let you go until I make sure that I have covered everything.
I remember one year standing up and saying that when I was a young man, as I would go to sleep every night, begin to go to sleep, I would say a prayer that my children grew up to be loving and warm to one another, good friends with each other, good members of their community, solid citizens, and decent people. And now I wanted to apologize to everybody because clearly I was on a roll with God because I got all those wishes and I forgot to add that they'd be rich and successful. Well, I had God's attention, I kind of blew it.
Yeah.
So I apologize to them.
Yeah.
But that's it.
But they're happy.
They are happy. I think they're good kids in there, and I enjoy their company enormously.
That's success.
They are my best friends.
Yeah.
And by far my best friends. And I hope they feel that way about me. I don't know always,
Right.
but I think they feel pretty good about me. And I'm not as good an uncle to my nephew as I should be because he lost his father early.
Yeah.
But I was there for him this weekend, and he wrote me back to thank me for
You
it.
do the best you can.
Do the best I can. I'm really
Yeah.
there's limits now to my ability to come
And-
out of
and-
myself.
right,
I'm really very in.
energy-wise.
I think there's something to be said about us and the elephants. As elephants get to be a certain age,
Yeah.
like a lot of members of the animal kingdom, they go off somewhere to find a place to kind of lie down and retire permanently. And I'm more and more becoming more and more reclusive, more and more to myself, more and more self-involved. That's why I'm writing as much as I am
Yeah.
and enjoying that process as
Yeah.
much as I do.
Yeah.
So it's supposed to be a lonely process. I don't find it that.
Yeah.
I'm in the company of my best friend, when
Yeah.
I'm doing that. So
I'm
so I am.
excited for the two of you.
Yeah.
There's a lot to do.
He's not referring to me when he says he's in the company of his best friend.
No, it's my second best
in the
friend.
company
I'm my
of
best friend.
himself.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
even better.
Yeah,
Great.
Yeah, I'm very content that way, and then
And he-
I
But
get to come home to her.
Oh,
So
the
it's
only
not
way
bad.
you can really be a good companion to somebody else is to be a good companion to yourself.
I think so. I think that's
I
very
think so.
wise. I agree with that.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And he's still creative. He came up with a great idea for a series for me.
for her. Yeah.
Oh.
Which I want to give away to
Oh,
somebody.
okay,
but I got to
don't-
find a
don't.
show. We got to find a
Don't.
showrunner.
Yes.
Got to find somebody who can actually get it made. That's the hard part.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people could write it. I'm not worried about the
Right.
writing as much as
Right.
I am about who can actually get it
Get
on
it
the air.
made.
Yeah, get it.
So I got to find that person. I'm in
Something
search of
tells
that.
me
So
you
good.
can
It is
do
so
that, Barney.
Well, it's
something
easy.
tells
The ideas are
Well,
easy.
no, he's not.
Oh no.
No, I'm
He's
just saying
lost
that you
the will
can find
to
the person
pitch.
to get it
Well,
made.
the problem is most of the people I know who do that sort of thing are either incredibly rich and have no interest in this, or they're dead. So it's
Right.
hard to
Well, that's
find.
Challenging. Yeah.
It's really good.
I
Really
bet it
good.
is.
Very good.
And
Yeah.
it's
Well,
good for an old drunk like me.
Right.
Great.
Yeah. Typecasting.
In my youth, yeah. Somebody's got to do it. For someone my age.
Antoinette, did we answer all your questions?
I'm just in reverie of the two of you.
Oh.
Beautiful.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm in reverie of you because I think you're the finest interviewer I've ever enjoyed in my entire career.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
I've said that to you before, and I
Yeah,
say it.
thank you.
Well, I've enjoyed it, but I don't get. I can't say because I don't get to do it very much. People don't care too much about me, but thank you for caring and asking
you.
about it. I've enjoyed doing it. We have a good time. Sometimes we go off together, and like I moderate the evening for her, and the two of us together are a good act. We did it the other night in Pasadena for some club.
See, that's what I would love to see you both doing. There's
Yeah,
so
well, I
much
don't know who's
wisdom
gonna-
and
They
charm.
loved him.
Who's
I'm
going to pay?
sure.
Who's going to pay money for that? I
I
can't.
don't
It's
imagine.
all women. They adored him.
Yeah, I get that.
Women in my age group, it's hard to find. Yeah, interesting. But yeah, it would be good for maybe a free trip on the Queen Mary. We could do that. Do our act on the ship,
Totally great
right.
idea.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to want to hear us on the Queen Mary.
Yes, they are. They're all old people on the Queen Mary. Of course,
Yeah.
they're going to want to hear us. You don't think any of these kids
They're
are on
not
the Queen
that
Mary?
old.
Yes, they are. Nobody young goes on the Queen Mary, for God's sake.
Yeah, I don't think
Who
so.
would do that? Anyway, that's their story.
That'd be fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you
Namaste.
for opening
Thank
your
you
home
for
to
caring
us.
about us.
Appreciate it. Oh, you're so loved, cherished, and cared for, and respected, and honored.
Thank you.
Appreciate the beautiful work you've given.
Now I got to get.